In today's world, people are more connected than ever yet more lost than ever. We scroll endlessly, swipe through lives, and consume content at lightning speed, but all of it rarely brings peace. There's a spiritual fatigue in the West, a kind of emotional burnout that no amount of social media, shopping, or self-help books can fix. In the chaos of unlimited freedom, people are starting to crave boundaries. They want something deeper than momentary happiness. They want lasting fulfillment. And that's where Islam steps in. It offers a complete framework for living with purpose, clarity, and peace. It doesn't just tell you what to do, it tells you why it matters. It offers connection not just to a higher power, but to yourself and your values. In a time when identity is fluid and fragile, Islam grounds people in something timeless. Islam isn't just a belief system, it's a way of life. For many in the West, life has become transactional. What can I get? How fast can I get it? And how good does it make me look? But those who turn to Islam are often people who have realized that fast pleasure doesn't mean real peace. Islam is about intentional living. It structures your day, your thoughts, your actions all around something higher than you. And when everything else feels uncertain, that structure becomes deeply comforting. 5 daily prayers, fasting, giving. These aren't restrictions, they're reminders. They remind people of discipline, of gratitude, of perspective. In a world where the self is constantly idolized, Islam recenters you on humility. That humility is freeing because it lifts the exhausting pressure to be your own God. The Western world often confuses freedom with meaning. You can do anything, but what should you do? And more importantly, who helps you answer that? Islam answers it not with vague philosophy, but with practical principles. It teaches people how to live in alignment not just emotionally or spiritually, but in every dimension. From how you treat others to how you treat yourself, there are standards, and that clarity is rare. Because when everything is negotiable, nothing feels real. Islam makes the invisible visible. It makes the sacred daily, and that makes a person feel anchored. No wonder so many find it powerful. It doesn't ask for perfection, it asks for effort and sincerity. And in return, it gives a clear path to walk one step at a time. People are drawn to strength, not the kind that shouts, but the kind that shows up, consistently and quietly. Islam is a deeply internal strength that manifests outward. And for people who are emotionally exhausted from performing confidence, this quiet strength is magnetic. It's not about showing off your peace. It's about living it. And when others see that peace in how you carry yourself, how you treat people, how you respond to chaos, they lean in. They want to know where it comes from. And when they look closer, they realize it's not about controlling life, but about surrendering to something greater. That surrender isn't weakness, it's liberation. Because the truth is, everyone's submitting to something. Culture, image, ego, and Islam simply makes the submission conscious and sacred. Another reason Islam resonates is because it gives people a complete spiritual diet, not just inspiration, but direction. In the West, spirituality is often DIY. A little mindfulness here, a yoga class there, a podcast to fill the silence. But while that may soothe the surface, it doesn't always satisfy the soul. Islam is different. It doesn't just speak to your feelings, it aligns your actions with your values. It provides structure that's not rigid, but rich, a way of moving through life that feels whole, not hollow. And that's why people who convert often say they didn't just learn something new, they became someone new. They stepped into a version of themselves they always sensed, but didn't know how to reach. That's the power of living a life rooted in deeper meaning. Much of the appeal of Islam in the West comes from what people aren't getting in their current lives. They're not getting consistent peace, real purpose, or a strong moral compass. They're tired of shifting cultural trends that tell them to redefine themselves every year. They want something that doesn't change with opinion polls or popularity. Islam offers that constancy. Its principles don't bend with fashion, and that's exactly why people respect it. Because in a world full of contradictions, Islam says, here is a consistent truth, and that truth doesn't ask to be trendy, it invites you to transform. It doesn't care if the whole world applauds, as long as your soul feels right. That integrity, that inner alignment is rare and deeply attractive. For a lot of Westerners, their first experience of Islam might be through someone they trust. A co-worker who prays, a neighbor who fasts during Ramadan, and what they see isn't fanaticism, they see devotion, not arrogance but calm certainty. That everyday example becomes the spark, and then they go deeper. They read the Quran, they listen to lectures, they start asking questions that matter, not what makes me happy, but what makes life meaningful, and they're often surprised by the wisdom, the logic, the compassion, and the dignity Islam teaches. It's not what they saw in the headlines, it's something altogether more human. And when their heart recognizes that, it starts to open in ways they didn't expect. Conversion to Islam isn't usually about emotion, it's about realization. It's not a phase or rebellion, it's a decision rooted in truth. Many converts will tell you it wasn't dramatic. It was quiet, certain, and deeply personal. They weren't pressured, they weren't manipulated. They simply saw something that spoke to their soul, and they couldn't unsee it. That's the power of truth. Once you recognize it, it's impossible to ignore. And the more they studied Islam, the more they found themselves reflected in its teachings. Not the version of them shaped by the world, but the version that had been waiting to be discovered. That kind of resonance can't be manufactured. It comes from something real, something higher. What's also powerful is how Islam doesn't just give people a new belief, it gives them a new identity, and not one based on ethnicity, wealth, or looks, but one based on submission to God. It strips away ego, image, and illusion. And for people who have been exhausted by the pressure to constantly perform, that's freedom. They don't have to keep up. They just have to show up with sincerity, with discipline, and with heart. And that's what makes Islam magnetic in the modern world. It tells people you are enough as long as you are true. It brings the sacred back into the ordinary. And suddenly, even the most mundane moments, a sip of water, a kind word, a quiet prayer become meaningful. Many people in the West are coming to realize that success without meaning is still a form of failure. You can have money, status, relationships, and still feel empty. Islam offers an antidote to that emptiness. It doesn't promise that life will be easy, it promises that it will be meaningful, that your pain will have purpose, that your struggle will be seen, that your actions, even the small ones, matter. That's a message more people are desperate to hear. And that's why, despite all odds and narratives, Islam continues to grow, not because of force, not because of trend, but because of truth that speaks not just to the mind, but to the soul. In a culture that rewards noise, performance, and self-promotion, true strength can feel almost invisible. We're constantly told to be bold, stand out, make noise, yet many are left feeling empty after doing all that. They build loud lives that look good but feel hollow. That's because real strength isn't about being seen, it's about being secure, even in silence. And that's what Islam teaches. It nurtures a quiet confidence, one that doesn't depend on applause. This strength comes from inner alignment, not external validation. It's about showing up in the world with calm, not chaos. For people tired of pretending, that kind of strength is magnetic. Islam empowers people through stillness. It doesn't ask you to shout your worth, it asks you to know it. In a world that says prove yourself, Islam says ground yourself. And that grounding doesn't come from ego, it comes from faith. That kind of strength makes people curious. They see someone who isn't shaken by trends, who doesn't chase approval, and they wonder where that peace comes from. It's the kind of presence that doesn't demand attention but commands respect. That's because it's not rooted in image, it's rooted in conviction. People feel safe around that energy. It's the opposite of chaos, and it draws them in like gravity. Many people in the West are emotionally exhausted from trying to keep up. They're told to be everything all at once: successful, independent, popular, flawless. But deep down, they're burnt out. Islam offers a relief from all that. It doesn't ask you to be everything, it asks you to be sincere. It doesn't glorify perfection, it honors effort. And that simplicity becomes powerful, because while others are performing peace, Muslims are practicing it. While others are chasing the next trend, Muslims are rooted in timeless principles. It's a way of living that speaks softly but leaves a deep impact, and more people are waking up to that. Stillness in Islam isn't passive, it's intentional. It's the stillness that comes from knowing who you are and what you're here for. In a society that glorifies movement, Islam teaches the strength of presence. Think about prayer 5 times a day, pausing everything. That kind of discipline requires inner strength to stop, to disconnect from the world and reconnect with God. That's not weakness, that's power. And people notice it. They see someone who can step away from chaos without fear of missing out. Someone who's rooted enough to pause, and they realize maybe that's the kind of strength they've been craving too. The Western world often associates power with dominance, being louder, faster, more visible. But the strongest people are often the ones who don't need to dominate at all. Islam teaches that dignity comes from self-restraint, not self-display. That real leadership is in character, not charisma, and when people see that, especially in a world obsessed with appearance, it shocks them. They realize power doesn't have to be aggressive. It can be gentle, consistent, and unwavering. That's a radical idea in today's world, but also a deeply attractive one. People are drawn to those who move with quiet purpose because it feels trustworthy, it feels real. Confidence rooted in spirituality is different than confidence rooted in ego. Ego says, "Look at me." Faith says, "I'm guided." And that changes everything. When your worth comes from your creator, not your followers, you move differently. You're not chasing people's approval, you're focused on doing what's right. That shift brings peace, and people notice it. They can feel the difference between someone who's trying to impress and someone who's trying to live with integrity. Islam builds that kind of strength. And when people see it in action in how Muslims speak, carry themselves, and handle conflict, they're intrigued. They want to know what's behind that calm. Strength in Islam also shows up in restraint, in choosing patience over reaction. In a world where everything is instant food, feedback, gratification, Islam slows you down. It teaches self-control as a form of honor, to pause before speaking, to forgive when it's easier to fight, to choose mercy when revenge would feel good. That's not weakness. That's strength most people never master. And when people witness that in Muslims, in how they manage their emotions, how they deal with injustice, it challenges their definition of power. It shifts something, it makes them rethink what it means to be strong. The West often measures strength in physical or financial terms, how much you can lift, how much you can earn, but inner strength isn't visible until it's tested. And Islam builds that inner strength day by day, through prayer, through fasting, through character refinement. These aren't just rituals, they're spiritual workouts, each one teaching discipline, patience, humility. And over time, that becomes unshakable. So when life throws something hard, a betrayal, a loss, a failure, Muslims are trained to respond, not just react. That calm in the storm, that ability to hold faith through fire, that's real strength. And it doesn't need to be shouted, it speaks for itself. What people in the West are realizing is that loud doesn't equal powerful. You can be the loudest in the room and still be the most insecure. but someone who's anchored in purpose, who lives by principle, doesn't need noise. Islam teaches people to lead with their values, not their volume, to show their strength through patience, not pressure, and that creates a different kind of presence. It's the kind of presence you remember not because it was loud, but because it was real. That authenticity is rare in a world full of filters, and it's part of why Islam continues to draw people in, quietly but powerfully. When someone sees a Muslim calmly walking away from temptation, honoring their commitments, or handling trials with grace, it creates curiosity. It doesn't come across as arrogance, it comes across as mastery, a kind of emotional and spiritual intelligence that many are seeking. It's not performance, it's peace, and the more chaotic the world becomes, the more people are craving that energy. They don't want the loudest person, they want the most grounded one. The one who doesn't just speak of values but lives them. And in Islam, those values are clear. That's where the strength comes from, not from trying to be everything, but from knowing exactly who you're here to be. In modern Western societies, individualism is praised as the ultimate sign of progress. From a young age, people are taught to be independent, self-sufficient, and to chase their own happiness above all. But despite all this freedom, loneliness is quietly reaching epidemic levels. People are more digitally connected than ever, yet deeply disconnected in real life. Social circles are shrinking, trust in institutions is fading, and the sense of belonging is growing weaker. In this emotional void, Islam's sense of community stands out like a beacon. 5 daily prayers, weekly gatherings, shared fasts, they're more than rituals, they're connections. They remind people, you're not alone in this life. That message speaks to something ancient and aching in the modern soul. Islam's structure naturally fosters relationships. It brings people together not just through beliefs, but through consistent action. You pray side by side, shoulder to shoulder, regardless of race, class, or background. You break your fast with strangers who quickly become family, and you check on neighbors not because it's expected, but because it's taught. In the West, where so much of life feels transactional, this sincerity is refreshing. There's a warmth to it, a kind of emotional safety people didn't know they were missing. It doesn't take long for someone to walk into a mosque and feel that difference. It's a culture of inclusion, not isolation, and for many, it's the first time they've felt truly seen and valued. There's a powerful kind of healing that happens in belonging. People are starved not just for love, but for loyalty. They want to know that someone cares if they're struggling, that someone will notice if they're missing. Islam builds those bonds intentionally. The Prophet Muhammad emphasized community so deeply that he said, "A Muslim is a brother to another Muslim." It's not just a nice idea, it's a way of life. That emphasis on brotherhood and sisterhood creates a support system stronger than most modern relationships. And it's not limited to just friends, it's every member of the Ummah, the global Muslim family. That spiritual kinship transcends borders, backgrounds, and even language. In Western culture, success often means independence, doing it all on your own. But Islam teaches that strength lies in unity, that helping one another is a form of worship, and that mindset reshapes everything. It changes how you view your role in society, not as a competitor, but as a contributor. You're not just living for yourself, you're part of something bigger. That's a huge mental and emotional shift. In times of hardship, you're not isolated. Your community rallies behind you. In times of joy, your celebrations are amplified by those who genuinely care. That depth of connection isn't common in a world where most relationships are shallow. But in Islam, it's woven into the daily experience. Even the rituals in Islam are designed to unify. Ramadan, for example, is one of the most emotionally powerful experiences in the Muslim calendar. Millions of people fasting from sunrise to sunset, together experiencing hunger, reflection, and renewal as one. Every night they come together to eat, pray, and reflect. That shared experience bonds hearts in a way words can't. It teaches empathy, humility, and gratitude not through theory, but through living it. People who never knew each other a week before become spiritual companions, and those moments stay with you long after the month is over. In a world obsessed with self, this shared sacrifice feels sacred. It reminds people that the best things in life aren't taken alone. Islam also builds community through service. Charity isn't optional, it's a pillar of the faith. Zakat, or obligatory charity, ensures that those in need are not forgotten. And beyond zakat, Muslims are constantly encouraged to give their time, their energy, their kindness. That spirit of giving transforms communities. It creates a cycle of compassion that others can feel, even from the outside. For those watching from afar, it's not just impressive, it's inspiring. They see a group of people showing up for each other again and again. No one's asking for credit. They are just fulfilling a responsibility to one another. That kind of sincere, collective care is rare in modern life and deeply moving. What makes Islamic community even more compelling is how it balances accountability with love. You're not just left to drift through life, you're guided, supported, and gently corrected when needed. There's a sense of collective growth. If someone's struggling, others step in with advice, prayers, or presence. That environment breeds resilience. It tells people, you don't have to be perfect, but you don't have to do it alone. And for many in the West, that message hits hard because they've been conditioned to hide their pain, pretend they're fine, and carry everything solo. In Islam, vulnerability isn't a weakness, it's a chance to connect more deeply with others and with God. When people convert to Islam, many describe the community as one of the most transformative aspects. It's not just about adopting new beliefs, it's about gaining a new family, one that welcomes you, teaches you, and stands beside you. That transition can be emotional, because for the first time, many feel what real belonging is like. Not based on superficial interests, but on shared values, not on popularity, but on purpose. It's a family bound not by blood, but by belief, and that kind of connection endures. It creates bonds that stretch across generations and continents. In a society where family and friendships are often fragile, this kind of rooted community is priceless. The power of Islamic community isn't just in what it gives you, it's in how it changes you. When you see people sacrificing for one another, praying for one another, helping each other without asking, it transforms your heart. It pushes you to be better, to care more, to show up when it's inconvenient. That's what true connection does. It holds up a mirror to who you could be. It reminds you that growth isn't a solo journey, it's something we do together. In a world that often tells you to only look out for yourself, Islam tells you, look out for your brother, your sister, your neighbor. That message is powerful, and more people are beginning to crave it. Ultimately, community in Islam isn't a side benefit, it's central to the faith. It's reflected in the way people greet each other, gather for worship, and live their daily lives. It's a faith that doesn't just ask you to believe, it asks you to belong, and that belonging heals something deep. It makes you feel protected in a world that often feels cold. It teaches you that love isn't just emotional, it's action. And when people from the West experience this, truly experience it, something in them shifts. They realize they've been hungry for connection, not just content, for meaning, not just moments. And they begin to understand why so many are turning to Islam, not just for God, but for each other. In a world that is constantly shifting economically, politically, socially, people are searching for something that feels permanent. Something they can anchor to when the world feels unstable. Trends come and go, values shift overnight, and what's considered truth today is often questioned tomorrow. This kind of instability creates a deep spiritual fatigue. Islam, on the other hand, offers timeless principles. It doesn't reshape itself to fit the moment, it calls people to rise to a higher, enduring standard. Its teachings are consistent, clear, and rooted in centuries of wisdom. For many, this stability feels like a lifeline. It's not just comforting, it's transformative. because people don't just want new answers, they want eternal truths. What makes Islam stand out is not just its theology, but its clarity. It doesn't leave people guessing about what matters. It defines right and wrong without apology. It offers clear guidelines for how to live, love, lead, and grow. In a culture where moral lines are blurred and constantly redrawn, that kind of certainty is rare. It's not about control, it's about direction, and many people are craving that. They're exhausted by the pressure to invent their own truths, to justify their impulses, to live without boundaries. Islam says, here is a path, walk it with intention. That message doesn't stifle freedom, it refines it. It gives people a foundation they can build a life on. One of the most appealing aspects of Islam is how it connects every part of life to purpose. Nothing is random, nothing is wasted. The way you eat, speak, sleep, dress, all of it can become a form of worship. In a secular society, people are often split in two, who they are spiritually and who they are data, A. But Islam merges the two. It turns daily life into devotion. That holistic approach fills the emptiness that so many feel, because it answers the deeper questions: why am I here? What is this all for? Instead of chasing fulfillment in fleeting experiences, Islam invites people to live with meaning every moment, and that meaning is magnetic. For people raised in a system that values self over service, the discipline of Islam can feel revolutionary. It teaches that true freedom comes from self-mastery, not indulgence. That real joy isn't found in chasing every desire, but in aligning your life with a higher will. And that's not just inspiring, it's empowering. Because it gives people control over what truly matters. Prayer becomes a form of power. Fasting becomes a spiritual cleanse. Modesty becomes an act of confidence, not shame. These practices aren't restrictions, they're tools. Tools for transformation, and when people begin to live by them, they feel something shift, something real, something they couldn't find in self-help books or social media. There's a spiritual hunger in the West that money and success can't satisfy. People have achieved material milestones, yet feel emptier than ever. They have followers, but no faith, comfort, but no clarity. Islam meets that hunger not with emotional hype, but with structured spiritual growth. It doesn't just give you inspiration, it gives you instruction. How to be a better spouse, a better parent, a better leader, how to navigate trials, how to carry your dignity in a world that constantly tries to steal it. These aren't vague ideas. They're practical steps, and that practicality makes Islam not just a religion, but a full way of life. One that brings peace because it brings purpose. Many are surprised to learn how intellectual Islam is. It doesn't ask for blind faith, it encourages deep thinking. From the Quran's intricate linguistic design to its emphasis on knowledge and reflection, Islam appeals to both the heart and the mind. This balance is rare, especially in a time when belief is often dismissed as irrational or anti-intellectual. Islam says, question, study, explore, but don't lose your soul in the process. It invites curiosity, not just compliance. And that makes it resonate with thinkers, seekers, and skeptics alike. They don't feel silenced, they feel seen, because Islam respects intelligence as part of the path to faith, not a threat to it. Another element that draws people in is how Islam makes suffering make sense. In the West, pain is often viewed as a problem to be fixed or a failure to avoid, but Islam dignifies pain. It gives it a purpose. Trials are not punishments, they're opportunities to grow, to turn back to God, to purify the heart. That reframing is powerful. It gives people resilience instead of despair. It doesn't promise a life without hardship. It promises that hardship won't be meaningless. That every tear, every test, every delay is part of a divine design, and in a world where so much feels random, that kind of meaning is a deep comfort. Islam's timelessness is not just about tradition, it's about relevance. Its principles don't expire. The way it honors parents, protects the vulnerable, champions justice, these are values the modern world is still struggling to figure out. Yet Islam established them centuries ago. It doesn't wait for culture to catch up. It leads, and people are starting to notice that maybe, just maybe, the answers they've been searching for aren't new ideas but ancient truths. Truths that have guided millions across continents and centuries. And the more people explore these truths, the more they realize they don't need to keep reinventing the wheel. They just need to return to what works. There's something unshakable about a faith that's been preserved so precisely. The Quran hasn't been altered, the prayers haven't been rebranded, the pillars haven't been modernized. That preservation is part of its power because it tells people this isn't man-made. It wasn't built to bend with trends or collapse under criticism. It stands because it's rooted in truth, and people respect that. Even those who don't fully understand Islam yet are drawn to its strength, its consistency, its resistance to dilution. In a world of edits and updates, it's rare to find something that hasn't changed and doesn't need to. That kind of integrity creates deep trust. Ultimately, people are not just looking for something to believe in. They're looking for something to live by, something they can pass to their children, something that won't lose relevance in a year. Islam offers that kind of lasting structure. It's not swayed by the latest narrative. It stands tall in every era, and in a time when everything is being questioned, redefined, or discarded, that stability is more than appealing, it's revolutionary. People don't just want new content, they want constant truth, and that's what Islam provides, not because it's rigid, but because it's rooted, and for many in the West, that's exactly what they've been missing.